The research design is embodied in the third chapter of the UL Prescribed report. So, chapter 3, entitled Research Design, consists of the following sections. Number 1, we have research method to be used. Then we have locale of the study. Next, we have participants. And then we have instrumentation. Data gathering procedure. Then we have data management and analysis. And finally, we have ethical considerations. So these are the minimum requirements, okay, for the third chapter of the UL Prescribed report that begins with the research method to be used. So let's start with research method. Okay, research method is the technique that we use, okay, in order to answer our research questions. So research methods based on our previous discussions, okay, may be classified in varied ways. We can have it on the basis of the time element, and where there are 3 fundamental types, such as historical, descriptive, and then we have experimental. Okay, so historical as a research method, okay, technically and basically answers the question what was, meaning it will account for what had happened in the past in order to give light to the present situation. Okay, so that's the first. Second, we have descriptive. So descriptive, based on the work of Best, is defined as a method that answers the question what is. Okay, so it is concerned about the present. It is all about the contemporary events. It is all about the present condition or situation. Lastly, we have experimental. So going by the meanings provided to the first two, okay, in a similar way, we describe experimental method as engaged with providing the answer to the question what will be or what will happen in the future. So these are the 3 types of methods based on time element. So historical, descriptive, and experimental. Please note that descriptive, okay, have descriptive method can be categorized further into the following subtypes. Okay, so we have survey, we have developmental studies, we have correlation study, we have comparison study. Under comparison, we have ex post facto, we have trend and projection studies, we have documentary analysis, and so on and so forth. As for experimental, we have it in 3 basic typologies. We have true experimental design, we have weak experimental design, and then we have the quasi, or we have the pseudo experimental design. Okay, so that's according to time element. We can also have it on the basis of the type of data. Okay, so it can be quantitative or qualitative, or a combination of qualitative and quantitative, where in the combination of qualitative and quantitative, we can have it in terms of the following types of mixed methods, such as sequential explanatory, sequential exploratory, okay, and others. So that will be for the different types of method. And in addition to what I have mentioned, there are a lot more. So it will depend, okay, primarily on the objective or the object of the study, or the project that you propose, that you are proposing. Okay, so that's the first. Okay, we have research method to be used. Okay, why to be used? Because if we talk about proposal, we have it based on the first three chapters of the report, that will include chapter 1, the problem and its background; 2, review of related literature and studies; and number 3, we have research design. Okay, so please have the tense of the verbs that you use in the report present or future tense. Okay, and have all this, okay, automatically transposed into the past tense form once you are done with the research, once you are already once you have already completed the study. Okay, so the final report, okay, will now be in the past tense form. Okay, for the verbs that you use in the discussions. Okay, also I'd like to also remind you that in qualitative studies, as opposed to the other types, particularly the quantitative ones, okay, where you observe the third person form of the pronouns, okay, instead of the possessive pronouns like I or okay, my. Okay, you use uh, a third person form like the researcher. Okay, in documenting the insofar as the documentation is concerned. But for qualitative, okay, you can have it in the personal pronoun I or my. Okay, so that will be the distinction between quantitative and qualitative in terms of documentation and the pronouns that you observe, okay, in the report. Okay, so that's for research method to be used. So you need to identify what is the most appropriate method that you may employ on the basis of the research objective or the research purpose. That should be clear in the discussion under this section. Okay, research method to be used. Okay, so you need to provide an elucidation why you have chosen, okay, the research method, and how it will apply, or how it will relate or correspond to the research questions that you have part of your research project. And then we have locale of the study. Okay, so locale of the study will dwell on the research site. Okay, so the discussion shall give proper justification for the choice of the place of the conduct of the study. So you will need to think of a logical, okay, and a compelling reason that insofar as the choice of the location of the investigation is concerned. So the question, the discussion for this section shall be guided by the question, what have been the considerations, okay, in the selection of the research site, okay, in the purview of the research objective. So what characteristics or what qualifications, okay, the place of the conduct of the study, okay, has or possesses, okay, that will legitimize or that will justify the conduct of the study, okay, in that area of investigation, in the area of investigation. So alongside the discussion, you will need to also have part of the documentation, a cartograph that will describe the site of the study, the research site. So we have the site map, okay? So it's a cartograph indicating where to locate, okay, the research site or the place of the conduct of the study. So you have it in one page and clearly indicating where in the vicinity map you can find the location of the institution or the place, okay, of conduct of investigation. Okay. Then we have participants of the study. So the participants of the study, okay, will introduce, okay, the source of your data if you are talking about individuals, okay, and particularly for survey studies, you refer to them as respondents, okay? So in a survey study where the individuals answer directly the items in a questionnaire, okay, directly, okay, they're regarded as respondents, okay? And while in studies involving assessment or phenomenological studies where you conduct interviews with focal persons, you call them key informants, okay? Or generally, if in a mixed methods, okay, you refer to them as participants of the study. Okay, so in the participants of the study section, or if in more specific terms, survey under the side head title respondents of the study, you need to describe to discuss, okay, who the respondents are, what their descriptions are, and how did you select them. So this would bring to the fore the discussion of sampling procedure, and where sampling procedure, okay, is concerned with three things. Number one, determination of the population size. Obviously, in most instances, you cannot compute for the sample size unless you have established the total population. After having done that, then you now proceed to the calculation of the sample size based on certain formula. Okay, and this I would like to remind everyone about the use of a specific formula suitable to the type of study that you are proposing. It is not always right. Okay, after all, okay, the Slovene formula, the popular Slovene formula have been misused and overused, okay, over the years. Okay, so it is not a one size fits all formula, and the Slovene formula is not the uh, the only, okay, formula that will aid you in computing the required sample size. Okay, so better yet, okay, you explored the uses of G power, which is available in the net, and you can easily uh, perform the computation of the required sample size based on the G power. Okay, and then lastly, to decide whether to use probability sampling or non-probability sampling. So some sampling types, okay, sampling procedures, okay, can be a choice between um, probability and non-probability. Okay, so when we opt for probability, we have different types to consider. We have simple random sampling. We have systematic sampling with a random start. We have uh, stratified random sampling. We have quota sampling and the like. Okay, while non-probability, okay, if for example there are some constraints, okay, in the observance of randomization, okay, as a critical element of a of the probability sampling procedure, then we settle for its non-probability counterparts, such as accidental sampling, which is also referred to as your snowballing method. We also have purposive sampling. We have yeah, so these are examples of non-probability types. Okay, so now we proceed to the next. So that will form part of the discussion under participants of the study, the sampling procedure. Now we proceed to the instrumentation. So instrumentation, okay, will also deal with three things. Number one, discussion of the instrument, if okay, if you will be needing a data gathering tool. Okay, so you need to identify what instrument, okay, and explain why you settle for such a data gathering tool. That's number one. And how will it will appeal to the method that you have chosen and in relation to the purpose of your study. Then number two, we have how did you develop your instrument, or what instrument did you adopt? If, for example, you have adopted or adapted, okay, so if you have adapted, you will need to also explain what changes you have effected based on the original form of the instrument you have used for basis of the data gathering instrument. Okay, so that will be the second, and the third will be to establish the validity and reliability. Should you have formulated or designed your own instrument yourself, okay, or if you have adapted, okay, where you have slight modifications, okay, even, okay, applied or observed in the data gathering procedure, okay, you'll need to still, okay, establish the validity and reliability of the instrument. So in simple terms, okay, Well, in simple terms, validity refers to the ability of the instrument to elicit the data that is required to answer the uh, the research questions. Okay, while reliability talks about the yield of the instrument, whether now or some other time, to this group or to the other group. No? Okay, um, will will be consistent. Okay, so it will be in terms of the consistency, okay, of the yield of the study, okay, that we establish in relation to reliability test. Okay, so that will be for the instrumentation. Now comes data gathering procedure. Okay, so what about data gathering procedure? Okay, now for the data gathering procedure, you'll need to detail the steps that you have that you will go through. Okay, in so far as the collection, the gathering and collection of data is concerned. So you need to be specific, okay, and as much as possible aided by a diagrammatic flowchart that will represent, okay, the different steps, okay, in the research data gathering process. Okay, so we have data gathering procedure. Now, in so far as qualitative study is concerned, you will also need to talk about trustworthiness of data. This is equivalent to reliability test and validity test. So to ensure trustworthiness, okay, you will consider certain criteria, particularly hinging from the work of Lincoln and Guba in 1985, particularly number one, dependability, two, credibility, three, transferability, and number four, confirmability. So let's begin with dependability. Okay, so it is linked to both credibility and confirmability and is established by ensuring that if the study were repeated in the same context, using the same methods and informants, similar results or okay, the same results would be obtained. So you will need to incorporate your insights from studies, similar studies that is at every stage of the research process to improve the reliability of the method. Further, it is encouraged that you replicate the steps, okay, to prevent premature termination and minimize investigator bias. Okay, so by testing the replication of interview question, you ensure the accuracy of the methods and the reliability of the results. So that's dependability. Number two, credibility. So credibility is inherently tied, to the trustworthiness of the research findings. So you do this by employing strategies such as prolonged engagement. What do we mean by prolonged engagement? So this may involve the spending of extended time, okay, with the informants in their natural setting or natural environment, just so to gain a deeper or deepen understanding of their behavior, values, and relationships. Okay, and this was based on the word of Creswell in 2012. So by engaging with the informants in their day-to-day activities, okay, you will observe their behaviors and explore the meaning of their uh, experiences. Okay, for example, in phenomenology, uh, and will okay, help you much uh, in the understanding of their experiences. Okay, so we also have transferability. So this is the third one. So it refers to the extent to which the findings of one study can be applied to other contexts, okay, according to Shenton in 2004. So it is done by providing sufficient contextual information about the field works that you have done, okay, that you will do, okay, and provide and enable your readers to make connections to their own context. Okay? So um, that's transferability. And lastly, we have confirmability. We have similar to objectivity, it pertains to researchers' commitment to ensuring that the findings are derived from the informant's ideas and experiences rather than the researcher's biases. So these are the four, okay, that would point out on the trustworthiness of the data. Okay, and now comes your data analysis for quantitative data. Okay, you will talk in terms of quantification, particularly statistical treatment, which can be in the form of parametric or non-parametric, and of course, it will also require you to discuss why the choice of this statistical treatment in relation to the scale values of the quantitative data that you will gather, that you have gathered. Okay, so you need to have it based on the research question. So it will be a one-on-one correspondence as to what statistical treatment may be needed, okay, per sub-problem. Similarly, you do this in qualitative studies, but by noting, okay, how you will have to qualitatively analyze the data. Okay, so for example, you have it in terms of coding process. We have identification of categories or themes, and in the interpretation of the data. That's according to Creswell in 2014. Okay, so that would be for data management and analysis. Now, the last will be the ethical considerations. Okay, the ethical considerations. So there are a lot of things to uh, discuss. Okay, but it may be in terms of the following, like adherence of the procedures to the guidelines of informed consent and confidentiality, okay, and other discussions like respect for persons, okay, where in this ethical consideration, the principle of respect for persons encompasses two ethical beliefs. Okay, so the first is that the individuals should be treated as autonomous agents, meaning they uh, uh, they uh, they live by themselves, okay, unaided by other people, so they are autonomous agents. And the second is that individuals with reduced autonomy should be safeguarded. So those who have, for example, um, uh, special needs, okay, uh, their what do you call this? Uh, that they be protected from any harm in the course of participating in the research undertaking. Okay, so the principle of respect for person entails two distinct moral obligations. Number one, recognizing autonomy and safeguarding individuals with reduced autonomy. Okay, so that's the first. Then we have beneficence. Okay, ethical treatment of individuals involves respecting their autonomy, preventing harm, and promoting their welfare. And this treatment adheres to the principle of beneficence. So it is commonly interpreted as encompassing acts of generosity or philanthropy, okay, that exceed the strict duty. So you would be considering beneficence as a mandatory obligation, and two rules have been established to express beneficial actions. Number one, non-maleficence, and number two, maximizing benefits while minimizing harms. Lastly, we have justice. Okay, so the principle of justice in research necessitates fair procedures and outcomes in selecting research subjects, similar to how the principle of respect for persons is reflected in consent requirements, and the principle of beneficence in risk benefit evaluation according to the work of Graviter and Forciano in 2006. Okay, so this and more can be discussed under the ethical considerations. So these are the subtopics under the third chapter, research design. And that ends our session for the three-part consolidation of the concepts and principles underpinning research, research report writing, and proposal making. Thank you, everyone.